Number A. Millionaire walked into church to find peace he left with a family. Ethan Hale had attended 7 funerals in his 38 years, but his mother's burial 3 weeks ago was the first one that left him questioning whether death might be preferable to the crushing emptiness that had settled over his life like a shroud. Tonight, Christmas Eve, he sat alone in the back pew of St. Mary's Chapel, a man worth $4 billion who couldn't afford a single reason to keep breathing. The church was nearly empty, just a handful of souls seeking something he'd lost faith in finding. His Italian leather shoes, worth more than most people's monthly rent, felt heavy against the worn wooden floors. His Armani suit, tailored to perfection, couldn't hide the fact that inside he was collapsing like a building whose foundation had been ripped away. The money, the power, the penthouse overlooking Central Park where he now lived like a ghost, none of it mattered anymore. His mother had been his anchor to humanity, and without her, he was drifting into a darkness that scared him more than any business rival ever had. The service had ended 20 minutes ago, but Ethan couldn't bring himself to leave. Going home meant returning to silence so profound it felt like drowning. Going anywhere meant pretending he was still alive when he was pretty sure something essential had died with his mother. He stared at the simple wooden cross above the altar, wondering if desperate prayers from desperate men ever actually reached wherever they were supposed to go. That's when he heard it. A voice so small and pure it seemed to cut through the spiritual static that had been jamming his connection to hope for weeks. God, I just want a dad for Mommy. She tries to be happy, but I can hear her crying sometimes when she thinks I'm asleep. She works so hard, and she's the best mommy ever, but I think she's lonely too. Maybe you could send someone nice who would love us both? Ethan turned slightly, careful not to intrude, and saw a little girl with auburn curls kneeling in a pew 3 rows ahead. Beside her, a woman in her early 30s sat with her head bowed, unaware of her daughter's whispered prayer. Even from this distance, Ethan could see the woman's clothes were worn but clean, her posture straight despite what must have been an exhausting day. The child finished her prayer and tugged gently on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, can we light a candle for Grandma?" The woman's face softened as she nodded, and together they moved toward the small alcove where votive candles flickered like tiny stars. Ethan watched as the mother lifted her daughter to reach the candles, the simple gesture filled with such tenderness that something cracked open in his chest, a place that had been frozen since his mother's death. As mother and daughter prepared to leave, Ethan caught a glimpse of the woman's face in the candlelight. She was beautiful, but it wasn't her features that struck him. It was the strength in her eyes, the gentle way she guided her daughter, the quiet dignity that reminded him so powerfully of his own mother. This woman wasn't broken by hardship. She was refined by it, shaped into something precious and resilient. The little girl turned back toward the altar one last time, and her eyes met Ethan's across the dimly lit church. Instead of shyness, her face lit up with a radiant smile, as if she'd found exactly what she'd been praying for. She tugged on her mother's coat and pointed toward Ethan, whispering something that made the woman glance in his direction. For just a moment, their eyes met, and Ethan felt a jolt of recognition that had nothing to do with having met before, and everything to do with seeing someone who understood loss, struggle, and the fierce determination to keep going anyway. They disappeared into the snowy night, leaving Ethan alone with a feeling he hadn't experienced in months: hope. For the first time since his mother's funeral, he felt truly awake, as if that child's simple prayer had breathed life back into his dormant soul. He didn't know their names or their story, but somehow he knew his life had just changed direction completely. Over the following days, Ethan found himself returning to that same neighborhood, not stalking but simply existing in the same spaces, hoping for another glimpse of the woman and child who had unknowingly shown him what real prayer looked like. He learned they lived in a small apartment above Rodriguez Grocery, that the woman, Claire Thompson, worked 3 jobs to support herself and 6-year-old Lily. Mrs. Rodriguez, the elderly store owner, was happy to chat with the well-dressed gentleman who'd started shopping there regularly, mentioning how Claire helped her with bookkeeping after hours and how little Lily always offered to help other customers reach high shelves. Ethan discovered that Claire worked early mornings at a diner, afternoons cleaning office buildings, and evenings doing data entry from home. She'd been widowed when Lily was just 2, her husband killed in a construction accident that left them with medical bills and no life insurance. Yet according to Mrs. Rodriguez, Claire never complained, never asked for handouts, and somehow always found ways to help others even when she had nothing to spare. The first gift arrived on a Tuesday morning, 2 bags of groceries left outside Claire's apartment door with a simple note. "You are seen. You are valued. Your kindness matters." Claire brought the bags to Mrs. Rodriguez, worried they'd been delivered to the wrong address, but the elderly woman just smiled and said sometimes angels work in mysterious ways. The food was exactly what Claire needed, basics that would stretch her budget and ensure Lily had proper meals for the rest of the week. Wednesday brought a repairman to fix the apartment's temperamental heater, claiming he'd been prepaid by an anonymous benefactor who'd noticed the unit struggling during the recent cold snap. Thursday, Claire's car mysteriously passed its inspection and received necessary repairs, the mechanic explaining that someone had covered the bill because they'd noticed her using public transportation in dangerous weather with a small child. Each gift came with the same type of note, simple affirmations that Claire wasn't invisible, that her efforts mattered, that she deserved rest and comfort. Never was there any request for gratitude or acknowledgement, never any suggestion that the recipient owed anything in return. The gifts weren't grand gestures, but practical helps that made daily life a little easier, a little safer, a little less exhausting. From his careful distance, Ethan watched Claire's reactions to each unexpected kindness. She didn't become dependent or entitled. Instead, the relief from constant financial stress seemed to unlock even more of her natural generosity. He saw her shovel Mrs. Rodriguez's sidewalk without being asked, carry groceries for a pregnant neighbor, and spend her one free Sunday afternoon reading to children at the local shelter. She gave freely from what little she had, as if kindness was her natural language. One snowy evening, Ethan witnessed Claire collapse on the sidewalk outside her building, exhaustion finally overtaking her body's ability to keep going. Without thinking, he rushed to help, calling an ambulance and staying with Lily, while Claire was treated for dehydration and fatigue. At the hospital, he told the staff he was a family friend and quietly arranged for all medical bills to be covered. When Claire regained consciousness, she found Lily safe and cared for, but the mysterious helper had vanished, leaving only another note. Rest is not selfish. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Let yourself be cared for. The following week, Ethan engineered their first real meeting at a gas station early one morning. Both were filling their tanks when he struck up a casual conversation about the weather, introducing himself simply as Ethan and learning her name was Claire. Their interaction was brief but natural, Claire polite but maintaining appropriate boundaries with a stranger. Ethan was struck by her intelligence and dry sense of humor, the way she mentioned looking forward to Lily's excitement about the first real snow of the season. Their second encounter happened at the grocery store 3 days later, this time with Lily in tow. The little girl recognized Ethan immediately, her face lighting up as she tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, that's the nice man from church. Can I say hi?" Claire looked puzzled, not remembering seeing Ethan at church, but Lily was already approaching with the fearless curiosity of childhood. "Hi, I'm Lily. Are you shopping for dinner too?" Ethan knelt to her level, charmed by her directness. "I am. Do you have any recommendations?" Lily launched into a serious discussion of the relative merits of different pasta shapes, while Claire watched with amused affection. From that day forward, their encounters became more frequent and natural. Ethan would appear at the coffee shop where Claire grabbed her morning coffee, at the park where she took Lily on Sunday afternoons, at the library where they spent Saturday mornings. Each meeting built on the last, conversations growing longer and more personal. Lily began calling him Mr. Christmas, claiming he had the same sparkly eyes as Santa Claus, a nickname that made both adults laugh and eased the cautious atmosphere. Claire found herself looking forward to these chance meetings, enjoying the intelligent conversation and gentle humor of this man, who seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and opinions. He never pried into her financial situation, never offered unwanted advice about parenting, and treated both her and Lily with a respect that was increasingly rare in her experience. There was something almost old-fashioned about his manners, a courtesy that suggested he'd been raised by someone who valued kindness above convenience. Ethan, meanwhile, was discovering that watching Claire parent was like taking a masterclass in unconditional love. She was firm but gentle with Lily, setting clear boundaries while nurturing the child's natural curiosity and confidence. Even when exhausted, she gave Lily her full attention, answered endless questions with patience, and created magic from simple moments. A grocery store visit became a learning expedition. A walk in the park became a nature adventure. Bedtime stories became theatrical performances that left them both giggling. The truth unraveled on a Tuesday afternoon when Claire's best friend Sarah called in excitement. "Claire, you'll never believe this. I was browsing financial news sites during my lunch break, and I saw a photo that looked familiar. That Ethan guy you've been mentioning, is his last name Hale?" Claire confirmed it was, not understanding Sarah's sudden urgency. "Claire, Ethan Hale is a billionaire. He owns Hale Industries, that huge real estate empire. I'm looking at an article about him right now." The revelation hit Claire like a physical blow. Everything suddenly made sense: the mysterious gifts, the convenient solutions to her problems, the way Ethan always seemed to appear when she needed help most. She'd been someone's charity project, a way for a wealthy man to feel good about himself by playing benefactor to the grateful poor. The humiliation burned through her chest as she realized how naive she'd been, how completely she'd been manipulated. That evening, Claire called Ethan and asked to meet at the small park where they'd had many conversations. She arrived first, pacing the empty playground, while snow began to fall again. When Ethan appeared, she didn't give him time for pleasantries. "Why didn't you tell me who you are?" Her voice was controlled, but he could hear the hurt underneath. "I know about the groceries, the car repairs, the medical bills, all of it." Ethan's face remained calm, but his eyes showed genuine regret. "I should have told you sooner. I wanted to, but I was afraid you'd stop letting me get to know you." "Get to know me?" Claire's voice rose slightly. "Or study your charity case? Is this some kind of social experiment for you? Poor single mother. See how grateful she becomes when the rich man swoops in to save her." The accusation hung between them in the cold air, each word cutting deeper than she probably intended. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "Claire, you're the strongest person I've ever met. You don't need saving. What I needed was to learn from you how to live with purpose again." Claire shook her head, unwilling to be swayed by pretty words. "You lied to me. You let me think we were becoming friends while you were secretly managing my life like some kind of puppet master. How am I supposed to trust anything about this?" Ethan stepped closer, his voice earnest. "You're right. I should have been honest from the beginning. But Claire, everything between us has been real. The conversations, the laughter, the way Lily lights up when she sees me, the way you make me remember what it feels like to be human again. None of that was charity. But the help, the money, solving all my problems like some kind of fairy godmother, that's not what equals do for each other, Ethan. That's what rich people do for poor people they feel sorry for." Claire's voice broke slightly on the last words, revealing just how deep the wound went. She'd worked so hard to maintain her dignity, to prove she could handle her life without handouts, and discovering she'd been unknowingly accepting them felt like losing herself. Ethan ran his hand through his hair, frustrated with his own poor handling of the situation. "My mother died 3 months ago. She was the only family I had, the only person who kept me grounded. After the funeral, I felt completely empty, like I was just going through the motions of living without any real purpose. Then I heard Lily pray that night in church, and I saw you with her, and something woke up inside me that I thought was dead forever." Claire's anger softened slightly, but she maintained her protective stance. "So you decided to fix us? Make us your project to feel better about losing your mother?" Ethan shook his head. "I decided to learn from you. Claire, you've been taking care of everyone around you while barely keeping your head above water, but you still find ways to help others. You still smile at strangers, still take time to listen to Mrs. Rodriguez's stories, still make every day magical for Lily despite being exhausted. You reminded me of my mother, not because you needed help, but because you give love freely even when you have every reason to be bitter." The conversation was interrupted by the sound of running footsteps. Lily appeared from behind the playground equipment, where she'd apparently been hiding and listening. "Mommy, why are you mad at Mr. Christmas?" Claire knelt down to her daughter's level, trying to find age-appropriate words for a complex situation. "Sometimes grown-ups have misunderstandings, sweetheart. We're just talking through some things." Lily looked between the two adults, with the uncanny perception that some children possess. "Mommy gets scared when people help us because she thinks they'll leave," she announced matter-of-factly. "But Mr. Christmas isn't going to leave. He's different." Claire felt her carefully constructed arguments crumble under her daughter's innocent wisdom. Lily had seen something that Claire's defensive walls had prevented her from recognizing. Ethan knelt down beside Claire, speaking directly to Lily, but knowing the words were meant for both Thompson women. "I'm not going anywhere, Lily. I like spending time with you and your mom very much. Sometimes I helped with things because I wanted to make sure you were safe and comfortable, the same way your mom helps Mrs. Rodriguez or reads to kids at the shelter. People who care about each other help when they can." Lily nodded as if this made perfect sense to her 6-year-old logic. "Like when mommy fixes my favorite stuffed animal when it gets torn, or when I help her reach tall things." "Exactly like that," Ethan confirmed. "Your mom takes care of lots of people because she has a big heart. I wanted to take care of her because she deserves to be taken care of too." Claire felt tears threatening as the truth of Ethan's words settled over her. She'd been so focused on maintaining her independence that she'd forgotten how good it felt to be truly cared for, not as a charity case, but as someone valued and cherished. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I was scared. I've been on my own for so long that accepting help feels like admitting I can't handle my life." "You handle your life beautifully," Ethan said softly. "You've built something amazing with Lily, created a home full of love and joy despite every obstacle. I wasn't trying to fix anything because nothing about your life needed fixing. I was trying to show you the same kindness you show everyone else because you deserve to receive what you're always giving away." Lily, with the diplomatic skills of someone who'd learned to navigate adult emotions, took both their hands and pulled them toward the park bench. "Can we sit together and not be sad anymore? I like it better when we're all happy." As they settled on the bench with Lily between them, Claire felt the last of her defensive walls crumbling. This child, who'd prayed for a father, had somehow guided 2 lost adults toward exactly what they all needed. Over the following weeks, Ethan began visiting Claire and Lily's apartment regularly, experiencing domestic life for the first time in his adult life. Their small home was a revelation to him, every corner filled with evidence of love and creativity. Lily's artwork covered the refrigerator, board games were stacked on shelves, and the scent of home-cooked meals replaced the sterile perfection of his penthouse. He learned to help with homework, to appreciate the chaos of bath time, and to find profound satisfaction in simple bedtime stories. Claire watched Ethan transform from the polished businessman she'd first met into someone more relaxed and genuine. He laughed at Lily's jokes, asked questions about her day at school with real interest, and seemed to find joy in activities he'd probably never experienced. When Lily had a nightmare, he was the one who suggested they build a blanket fort in the living room and camp out together. When she wanted to learn about his work, he explained real estate development using her building blocks, making skyscrapers and neighborhoods that sparked her imagination. The moment that changed everything happened on a quiet Sunday evening in early February. They'd spent the day at the Children's Museum, followed by hot chocolate and a walk through the snow-covered park. Lily had been unusually thoughtful during dinner, working up the courage to ask something important. As Ethan helped clear the dishes, she suddenly wrapped her arms around his waist and looked up at him with serious eyes. "Ethan," she said carefully, "would it be okay if I called you Daddy sometimes?" The question hung in the air like a soap bubble, fragile and precious. Claire's hand stilled on the dish towel as she waited for his response, her heart hammering with the magnitude of what her daughter was asking. Ethan knelt down to Lily's level, his voice gentle but full of emotion he was struggling to control. "Lily, that would be the greatest honor of my life," he said quietly. "But only if you really want to, and only if your mom thinks it's okay." Lily turned to Claire with hopeful eyes, and Claire found herself nodding through sudden tears. "I think that would be wonderful, sweetheart." The word Daddy that followed was like a key turning in a lock, opening doors in all their hearts that had been closed for too long. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep between them during movie time, Claire and Ethan found themselves talking quietly on the couch about the future they were all beginning to imagine. "I never expected this," Claire admitted. "I thought my family was complete with just Lily and me. I didn't realize we had room for more love until you showed us what that could look like." Ethan took her hand, marveling at how right it felt to sit in this modest living room surrounded by the evidence of real life rather than the hollow perfection of his previous existence. "My mother always told me that family isn't about blood, it's about choice. She said the people who choose to love you every day, those are your real family. I want to choose you and Lily every day for the rest of my life, if you'll let me." The proposal happened where it all began, in the small sanctuary of St. Mary's Chapel on a snowy evening in March. Ethan had spent weeks planning, not a grand gesture that would draw attention, but a moment that would honor the sacred space where he'd first heard Lily's prayer and felt his heart wake up again. He'd arranged for the church to be open and softly lit with candles, creating an atmosphere of peace and reverence. When they arrived for what Lily thought was just their usual Sunday evening visit, she gasped at the beautiful scene. Dozens of votive candles flickered throughout the sanctuary, and white flowers adorned the simple altar. "It's like a fairy tale," she whispered, unconsciously echoing the wonder Ethan had felt that first night when her prayer had changed his life. Ethan guided them to the same pew where he'd sat months earlier, then surprised them both by kneeling in front of Lily first. "Lily Thompson," he said formally, producing a small velvet box, "you were the first person to show me what real prayer looks like. You asked God for a daddy for your mommy, and somehow that prayer found its way to my heart when I needed it most. Would you do me the honor of letting me be your dad, officially and forever?" Inside the box was a delicate gold locket, engraved with the words, "Daddy's Girl," and containing a photo of the three of them from their museum adventure. Lily threw her arms around Ethan's neck, whispering yes, 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 while happy tears streamed down her face. Claire watched this exchange with her hand over her heart, amazed by this man who understood that becoming Lily's father was just as important as marrying her mother. Then Ethan turned to Claire, producing a second ring box as he remained on one knee in the candlelit sanctuary. "Claire Thompson," he began, his voice steady, despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "6 months ago, I came to this church looking for peace and instead found my purpose. You showed me what strength really looks like, what love in action means, what it's like to live with an open heart, even when life tries to close it." Claire felt tears spilling over as he continued. "You don't need saving, Claire. You're the strongest person I know. But if you'll have me, I want to be your safe place to rest. I want to be Lily's dad and your husband, and the person who makes sure you never have to carry everything alone again. Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life choosing our family every single day?" The ring was perfect, not ostentatious but clearly chosen with care. A classic solitaire that caught the candlelight and threw tiny rainbows across the church walls. Claire said yes through her tears, and as Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, the church bells began to ring the hour, as if the building itself was celebrating their commitment. They were married in the same church 3 months later, in a ceremony that perfectly reflected their values. Instead of an elaborate society wedding, they chose a simple service followed by a reception that doubled as a fundraiser for the local shelter where Claire volunteered. Lily served as both flower girl and ring bearer, her joy infectious as she helped her parents exchange vows that promised to love, honor, and choose each other through whatever challenges life might bring. 1 year later, on the anniversary of that first chance meeting, the Hale family returned to St. Mary's Chapel for their new Christmas Eve tradition. Ethan and Claire sat in the same pew where he'd first heard Lily's prayer, now with their arms around each other and their daughter between them. The church was fuller this time, other families having discovered the peace and comfort of the small sanctuary. Lily, now 7 and even more confident in her relationship with both parents, bowed her head for her annual Christmas prayer. But this year, her whispered words were different. "Thank you, God, for giving me the best Christmas present ever. Thank you for my daddy who loves me and my mommy and makes the best pancakes on Saturday mornings. Thank you for our family and for showing me that prayers really do come true, sometimes in ways that are even better than what we asked for." As the service ended and families began to file out into the snowy night, Ethan reflected on the miracle of how completely his life had changed. The empire he'd built still existed, but now it served a different purpose. The Hale Foundation, established in his mother's memory, focused specifically on supporting single parents and their children, providing not just financial assistance, but practical help and emotional support. Claire had become the foundation's director, her first-hand experience and natural compassion making her perfect for the role. Their home, a comfortable house in a neighborhood full of families rather than an isolated penthouse, was always full of life. Lily thrived with the security of having 2 parents who adored her and each other. She'd kept her tradition of elaborate Christmas prayers, but now they were filled with gratitude rather than longing. The little girl who'd once asked God for a daddy had learned that family isn't always about what you're born into. Sometimes it's about what you're brave enough to ask for and wise enough to recognize when it arrives. Walking out of the church hand in hand, with Lily skipping ahead of them in the falling snow, Ethan and Claire looked like any other family heading home for Christmas Eve. But they carried with them the knowledge that their love story had begun with a child's prayer, been nurtured by kindness and honesty, and had grown into something that honored both the family they'd lost and the family they'd chosen to become. As they reached their car, Lily turned back one more time to look at the church where everything had started. "Daddy," she said, using the title that still made Ethan's heart skip a beat every time he heard it, "do you think other kids will find their families in there too?" Ethan lifted her into his arms, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the trust that radiated from her small body. "I think that church is full of miracles, sweetheart. And I think families find each other in all kinds of ways, sometimes when they're least expecting it." Claire smiled up at them both, this man and child who had become her whole world, and silently offered her own prayer of gratitude. She'd learned that love multiplies rather than divides, that opening your heart doesn't make you vulnerable but makes you strong, and that sometimes the family you choose is even more precious than the family you're born into. The snow continued to fall as they drove home through the quiet streets, past houses glowing with Christmas lights, and the warmth of families gathered together. In the back seat, Lily dozed off, clutching the locket that proclaimed her daddy's girl, while in the front seat, her parents held hands and planned the quiet Christmas morning that awaited them. They'd learned that the best gifts can't be wrapped, that real wealth is measured in moments of connection rather than dollars in the bank, and that sometimes a millionaire walks into a church looking for peace and walks out with something infinitely more valuable, a family to call his own.